Hello and welcome to episode number 3 of the Infinite Awe podcast Google Hangout show. I am your host, Matt Belair, and today we have an incredible guest for you. He is the founder and director of Pranayama Sadhana. Beginning his journey of self-inquiry at a young age, he began pursuing the questions, who am I? Where do I come from? Where do I go? And what must I do? This pursuit ultimately led him to the path of yoga. Intrigued by the nature of breath and prana, he has devoted his life to the traditional practice of pranayama, where he offers traditional teachings that inspire self-analysis and self-discovery. Based in Vancouver, BC and Ubud, Bali, he offers a traditional yoga practice that teaches and explores the ancient yogic science of breath regulation. He has been practicing pranayama for 20 years and teaching it exclusively for the last 10. If you've ever heard of the Ice Man Wim Hof, you're going to want to stick around because I consider this man to be the Bruce Lee or mixed martial arts master of breathwork. We are going to talk about the power of breath, the mind-body connection, and so much more. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to the show, Engel.
So good to be here. I'm really stoked to sit here and chat with you. I got the rising sun on my right side here and it feels good. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction too.
Oh man,
How are you doing?
my pleasure. I'm doing tremendous, man. It's nice to have you here.
It's good to be here. It's good to be here.
So I guess for most people, they're not going to really understand what pranayama is. So do you want to kind of give them a little rundown about what pranayama is and what it's about?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes people get a little floored by the question and by the word. What is pranayama? Um, is Pranayama means to come into. If I was to put it into layman's terms, I would say that pranayama is the scientific exploration of the phenomena of prana. Prana being this life force, this energetic signature, this energetic, um, this enigmatic energy that is responsible for everything that's manifest and unmanifest within the universe. In China, I call it chi, and Hindu tradition, we call it prana. And there's a little difference there, though. In Hindu tradition, they would say that prana has arose from the beginning of time. So prana is a representation of an intelligent order that once resided before the Big Bang. It's responsible for anything that is manifest, and that's from the pillars that keep your house up, to the tree that's growing, to the breath that you're breathing, to the composition of your bones in your body, and so forth. So what it is it's a science of learning to come into alignment with harnessing that, controlling that, and regulating that ability, so you're in direct alignment with this core component of life, prana. So respiration is the primary tool in utilizing prana. So this is, if you were to break it down really easily, it's a science of working and regulating with prana through respiration, through the breathing application. And so the cool thing is that if the word pranayama floors people and they're in a little state of wonder and question, um, they can always come back to the reality that it's just teaching you how to breathe and effectively harness a deeper quality of life, and a deeper state of awareness and self-understanding. And this all comes from the stillness of the practice. When the mind is still, we're able to comprehend and really come to a state of understanding of the self, and really start to peel back the layers of who we are and what we're capable of. That
That's
breaks it down enough.
Yeah, no, that's a amazing answer. Would you say that the like Tao or something or life force could be an interchangeable word for prana?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this is like, so prana is responsible for all energies that permeate the universe. So it's one primordial energy that gave rise to all energies permeating the universe. So the Tao, you could call it the subtle force, the subtle path, the subtle connection, the subtlety. It's that which is at the very core of it all. You know, if prana is the seat of yoga, just as prana is the seat of the Tao teachings. It is the Tao. You know, it's like it's just interchangeable words for sure.
Yeah, that's how I understand it anyway. And you know, the breath, it's interesting. It's so incredibly powerful. You know, when you come into this world, take your first breath and you're breathing the entire time until you take your last breath. So the way that I'm relating to what you're saying is something that I know that's true for me is when you do conscious breathing, you become you know, aware of the moment. You become aware of yourself and you are fully present. So then you are coming into alignment with the force, with prana, with the entire universe, with the whole. And so having that practice, you know, can put you in alignment with the Tao or source or prana, or however people want to interpret that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely it. I mean, it comes in stages. It starts with, if you were to say the conscious breathing, that's a word that's really prevalent nowadays in our communities and all throughout society. Is like becoming conscious, becoming, and it's true. Um, in yoga we call it sattvic, rajasic, tamasic, and tamasic is one who is, you know, it's not a bad word, but it's just one who is, you know, necessarily sleeping necessarily. It's and it's not because they're, I guess the word could mean also ignorance, but it just one, again, ignorance is not a bad word. It's just sometimes we become very comfortable. Like I could be sitting on this chair looking out at this expansive backdrop in Bali watching the sunrise and not really be caring about doing anything else. Like that could be considered a form of ignorance, because if I'm just here sitting here, I'm missing the thousand subtleties that are passing me by. To be conscious means to want to, you know, maybe explore those subtleties that are moving by, the sensations that once passed us by unnoticed. So, you know, having a conscious breath is really important, and I think it really does start there. You become consciously aware of, well, like, wow, I'm breathing, wow. And then it goes a little deeper. You start realizing, well, I'm inhaling, okay, let's consciously connect to that experience, inhaling all the way up, exhaling all the way out, and you become conscious of the actual movements of the breath. And then it starts moving into a deeper space where you start, you know, maybe what does it feel like, what does it mean if I hold the breath? And you're like, okay, well, how can I hold the breath? Well, maybe I'll inhale to that, and you hold, and you kind of start to observe yourself in the breath process, in the retention process, and then the practice starts growing, and you start going from having a conscious breath to um, an applied practice, you know, an intelligent sadhana. Sadhana means a spiritual exploration of oneness or transcendence or realization. So it really does start at that conscious connection to the breath for sure, you know, which is interesting. I've seen a lot of interesting results working with people with breath and having them go from a place where, you know, like it's funny. I'll have a workshop and I'll have you know, a girl bring her boyfriend, her husband in, and he'll be a construction worker, you know, and he'll sit down and we'll be get ready for class, and I can see, you know, brewing from his eyes and through his the traits pouring out from his behavioral patterns. It's like, what is this hippie stuff? What's this hippie shit, right? And then within 5 minutes, 10 minutes of starting to connect to this movement within the body of the breath, a whole shift begins, you know, and you start, you know, I remember one guy got up halfway through the workshop and everybody's deeply immersed into meditation, and he gets up and he's like, what is this shit? And starts walking off to the washroom and didn't come back for 10 minutes, came back and, you know, had a little bit of barf on his shirt. I guess he was, it was so much for him. Like his body wasn't capable of, at this point, he just wasn't able to handle that rhythm, that vibration of consciousness. And it was profound. I guess you could relate it to any other deeply hallucinogenic, you know, conscious experience, right? It's just sometimes it's too much at that moment for someone, and it shatters everything that they know about themselves, and they go from this place of, you know, like, I'm a strong man, I'm gonna drink a beer and hang out with my friends and shoot the shit, to, oh my God, I've never had an experience like this before. This is what they write novels about. So it's cool to watch the swaying of experiences within people. Sure.
Yeah, man. Well, I've experienced pranayama before. They're different kinds. The guy who's really brought it to light is Wim Hof, because he's doing amazing things and he's talking about one version. And the way that I introduced you at the beginning is saying that, with a Bruce Lee or mixed martial arts, because if Wim Hof, he has a technique that does something and it produces a result. And to me, it might be, karate. He's got one style. It's karate, and it's good and it's beautiful, and he's done amazing things. And Wim Hof is a champ. He's, I love him. He's amazing. And you, on the other hand, you have all these different styles, and you're familiar with what the breath is going to do to the body, what it can do to the person, what kind of experiences they're going to have, and they're really powerful experiences. And now we've got Tony Robbins in some of his stuff. He'll do a breath pattern, 4 in and then 4 out. And then there's Ananda Girl. So there are other people out there doing this type of thing, but it's not common knowledge yet. And, for me to speak to you, you're talking my language. I'm familiar with it. But for the average person, they're trying to connect the dots from where the heck they are to what you're talking about. And I wonder if there's an easy way for us to relate that to them, or if we can, just put it in a simple way of, just get them to practice, or what they're going to benefit from it, or just something that it can be, from an easier conscious slide, because it is something that if you do, you understand, right? If you've never experienced cold water before, how do you describe that to a person? Well, you jump in and now you know what cold water is like. And that's a little bit like what you do. So I've had familiar experiences before, but when I did yours, it was very powerful and interesting and intense, but it was a feeling that I had before, and I kind of knew what I was walking into. But for the average person, they're just like, what the hell was that? Like, how can this happen through breath work? And it's really powerful stuff. And I'm really blessed to have you in my life. And I'm really blessed to see that you are going to be sharing this, because I think this is something that needs to be in the public consciousness, because it's such a powerful practice. And you have a direct experience where that breathing is affecting you in such a way that you just begin to, you shatter your beliefs about yourself and about the world and all that's just through breathing. So it's incredibly powerful. And I just wonder if you can maybe add to my rant there, or bring it, you put it in a way that it might be, if you're going to bring someone to your class, like what type of person to come, or in a way that, a layman might understand what it is that you do. Because again, there's a million types of yoga out there now, and they've got the cookie cutter yoga where you go in and it's not really the traditional practice, but you are a full-on yogi in every way, and you are sharing the wisdom from that practice. So it's much different than going to your YMCA local yoga class.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm always humbled, and definitely always in the seat of the student. I can excitedly say that after almost 20 years of practicing and studying pranayama, studying the science of prana, that um, I am literally I'm just getting to the surface of understanding it. And anytime I begin to truly get to a place where I'm understanding prana, I really get floored. Everything about my knowing and understanding of it shatters, and I start all over again. But this is the path. This is the great subtle path. This is what it's all about. Rumi talks about it well, where when you come into alignment with love, soon as you get close to love, everything about you engulfs in flames, and what you once knew of yourself completely smolders, and you turn to ashes, and you rebuild, and you grow into that new being, that new form. And the lover, or the transcendentalist, or the yogi, um, is always in a state of bewilderment. It's like a divine bewilderment, because you're constantly in this space where you're just, you don't understand, you don't necessarily get where you are, but yet you have such a familiarity with it, because it's this eternal experience, this infinite experience. Um, if I was to I really touch on what you were saying there. And that's really like you don't need to be Hindu or practice postures. Like we traditionally, when we think of yoga, we think of doing postures. We think of Lululemon, we think of, like you said, the YMCA or something like that. Really, to be a yogi is a word. It's just a word that means transcendentalist, or someone who is to the transcendent arts, someone who is committed and focused on a profound, serene state of stillness within themselves, where they're seeing aspects of life that are infinite and pass the common person by. And so this is experiences available to every single person, yet they pass us by unnoticed sometimes. So the practice of pranayama is the most ancient practices amongst all practices. We have prayer, meditation, and pranayama, the three primary components in all spirituality, spoken of all throughout antiquity, all throughout the world. And pranayama is one that is just happens to be really the combination between prayer and meditation. It's like is the almighty experience. It's the almighty connection. Through prayer you speak to God, through meditation you hear God, through pranayama it's your exploration into the thumbprints, the blueprints, the backdrop, the themes that make up all of existence, and more. So pranayama consists of roughly 200 individual breathing techniques, and each technique has roughly, let's say, 20 variations. So there's almost 3,000 individual breathing techniques we have available to us that we can use to access different regions of ourselves, while primarily tapping into the various rhythms of prana and what they can offer us. So it's the yogi, plays with the pattern of the breath. The yogi plays with the nostrils, and you can kind of look at it as, I said this a couple times before. Um, it's like Krishna playing his flute. Krishna's really connecting to this space where he's creating this mystical world, and he's capturing and captivating the hearts of all his gopis and capturing the hearts of all his friends in the world, by manipulating and regulating the air that's moving through his flute. And the yogi is absolutely the same. The study of pranic studies is the exact same. They delicately play the pattern of the nostrils, um, to manipulate, control, harness, and regulate the various rhythms of prana. And by doing this, they're controlling the senses and controlling the mind. So it's this, Krishna's playing the flute, and he's controlling and captivating the hearts of all his friends. Whereas the study of pranic studies is, uh, they're playing the nostrils, they're playing the various rhythms of prana to captivate and to control the senses and the mind. So it's like this profound experience. And to really kind of summarize it all up and bring it to a space of clarity, what's happening here is that we're connecting. The cool thing about pranayama is it doesn't matter who you are, we all have an affinity with it. This is what pranayama is offering us and has been giving us for many, many years. It's offering, anyone who is sentient and living has a connection to the practice, and that's the cool thing about it. Every single being on this planet breathes, whether you're an ant, whether a fish. We all breathe in a certain way. um, and in yoga, it's teaching us. Pranayama is the primary component of yoga. It's the most ancient practice of all yoga. The postures people are traditionally known, and speak of and practice in, this is not so much the ancient practice of yoga. The ancient practice is regulating that component which is most abundant and most foundational to us, which is breath. And the yogis came to the space of how can they started understanding prana, but they were wondering, how can I control prana? How can I come to a place of connection with that prana? And they started to understand it amongst other things. Oh wow, the tree is growing. Oh wow, the sun is rising and setting every day. Wow, the moon has its cyclical pattern. Wow, I have my personality traits. Wow, each individual person has their personality traits. Each person has their individual habits. Each person has these belief patterns that arise through the external stimulation in this world. um, and and so that was what was at the forefront. But they were like, what's behind all of that? And they started understanding, oh wow, this is prana. So how can we come into connection with this prana? How can we utilize this? And they tried to utilize this through thought, through emotion, through movement, and it was never sustainable. So, and the yogi is always interested in something that's sustainable, because then it can be practiced every single day, every single moment, and not wear the body, wear the conscious mind down. So they found the breath. They saw, wow, the breath is a consistent, abundant source. I can go without water for only a certain amount of time. I can go without food for only a certain amount of time. If I utilize food in too much in one sitting, uh, I become overwhelmed. I become bloated. Same with water. But breath, this is this consistent, this abundant, unfolding experience within myself, and there's no ceiling to it. It's punctured a hole through the roof of the universe, and it's kind of this infinite experience. And that's where pranayama was birthed from. No one knows the exact origins of prana, and I'm not going to sit there and act like I know the origins, but I can have an understanding of what was moving through the minds. Practicing as long as I have, I can kind of understand what was maybe moving through the minds of those that have brought it into our awareness. It's definitely a practice that was passed down, by word of mouth. Definitely came probably from the gods, as it's spoken of in the ancient texts, in the Rig Vedas, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Purunas, the Samhitas. Krishna said he brought the practice of pranayama to the world, and so I guess that's where it came from.
Well,
yeah, like you go on. Let's hear what you have to say, because
yeah,
I'm just here for you.
I
Like,
was gonna say, holy smokes! I was like, that's you definitely failed on the make it simple, but it's such a deep lesson. Like, so much. You know what I mean? Like, it's like if somebody's going to you and you want to write a kid's book, but you're the greatest author of all time, and just so much. Like advanced essays. It's hard. You can't even. It's hard for you to come down and not share all of this knowledge that you have, because it's so deep, and you're one of the people that puts in the practice to learn these things. And this is one of those experiences and practices that you can't really explain through words, right? It's if you just came, if someone were to go to your class and experience it, then they would know through the experience everything that we're talking about, everything that you're talking about, and the history of it and where it comes from, and all the subtleties of the practice, and it's changing who you are, and you're seeing transformation in people just from teaching them different breath practices, and it's extremely powerful. And when people are listening to this, they're just they can only consciously deduce what we're talking about through their analytical mind and what they've experienced. So they have no reference point to what this is. Even for me, just doing martial arts, I was always, very aware of the breath, like, as a kid, and how important that was. When I trained with Shaolin Kung Fu monks in China, there was the same thing. They did Qigong, and it was all about the breath and breath work and alignment. When you're saying prana, it's an alignment with source. It's alignment with everything, but the alignment is within you. It's an alignment with yourself and what you are. And through these practices, you can really discover that. And that's what I think the amazing thing is about what you do and what you teach is people can, go through a 25 DVD course and all these manuals and have some sort of analytical experiences of what it is, and they still won't know. But if they were to go in and they were just to practice something for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or, have a weekend with you, then they're going to have that experience. And it's something that is in you that is not really, on the 3D level of consciousness where we can explain what's happening, because there are when you do the practices, you have these real mystical experiences. For me, the first time was when I left home. I was meditating on a pier in Santa Monica, and that was the first time that I just popped. I was in the void, I was in silence, and then just popped and was everything, kind of. And, it's something, again, you can't put into words. And then I had this really vivid experience. And then I came back and was like, what the heck is that? And then you're human again, and you're trying to wrap your head around what the heck that was. But it's this visceral experience that's within you. And that kind of took me a while for that to happen. And through just breathing, I'll do the Ananda Girl breath, the breathing pattern. And every time I do it, my body is just buzzing, just buzzing as I work through the chakras. And it's a very challenging thing to do. I'm moving energy, I'm moving prana, I'm coming in alignment, clearing everything that I need to. So my body and my energy system is in full alignment with source and with myself and with what I am. And it's a physical experience. So I think for a lot of people, when we'll talk about meditation, they're just like, I can't meditate. I don't know how. And they don't sit down and try to clear their mind. Well, of course not. And they want this like tangible experience. And I think that's what really makes you, again, very unique, because it is a tangible experience, like the guy you spoke of, or an avatar of the traditional guy that goes out and has beers with his buddies and does those things, which are all fine. But you're going to have a real experience that you don't understand. And then you have to create a new understanding of what the heck you are, what's happening, and what are you connected, because you're finding this connection in you. And it's always been there. You've just chosen not to look. So forcing you to look through breath pattern can make this experience super visceral, and then get you to question. And I guess, one of the questions I had lined up for you, and I knew we were going to rant back and forth, and we do when we talk about all this kind of stuff, and we get really deep in the rabbit hole. But our I want to make it accessible to others watching as well. But for me, I've always found that, the better question I can ask, the more awareness I can have. So through these practices, what are some of the questions you maybe have discovered within yourself, or for someone to pose for themselves, to have a greater connection with prana or the Tao, or with themselves, and, to liberate them, to liberate the mind? Because a lot of people, they feel trapped. They're, in anxiety, or they live a life that they don't want, and they can't find happiness. They don't have these surroundings. So I think that asking yourself powerful questions, very good quality questions, can help with that. And I know that you've been, deep into it for a long time. And I'm just wondering if you have maybe some questions that you offer to your students, that we can share with the people watching.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I want to tap into what you said there. A tangible experience, and that's really what it is. This is something you can talk about it, and you can keep explaining what's happening. But the truth is you have to experience it. And no matter how you engage in the practice, you're going to experience something. Um, Iyengar said this beautiful quote, which was, "Yogic philosophy is a practical philosophy that can't be expressed, debated, or discussed. It's a philosophy that has to be experienced." And that says a lot, because it's true. I mean, I could sit here and tell you, before you ever came to say that practice that I shared with you that one time. Uh, if I told you all about what you were going to experience, you would understand it, but you wouldn't feel it like you necessarily did when you practiced it. And then when you practice it, you're just like, wow, like, okay, the familiarity, I understand it now. There's a deeper understanding. Um, the questions that I could offer my students, and just any person that wants to practice or is wondering about the practices, the great questions is inquiring about who you are, and to analyze that inquiry, to really come into a direct analysis of who you are as a person, and really pay attention to your traits, pay attention to, what am I doing in this life, what is causing me to be reactive. And those are questions that have changed my life, like coming into alignment with, what is what does it mean to perceive this world. And to perceive this world means to come into connection and contact with the five senses. This is what's responsible for allowing you to perceive and connect to this world. These five senses are sight, smell, taste, sound, touch. And by this connection, these five patterns, they're responsible for everything that you know of, consciously, unconsciously, your feelings, your emotions, your thoughts, everything. From what you hear, someone says something you don't like, you hear that, and then you hold on to those sounds, you hold on to those expressions that someone shared with you, and you process them through your thoughts, you emotionally connect to them, and you may hold on to it for years and months and years and months. It's this pattern that goes back and forth. But it comes back to the breath, because the inhale comes in and you let the inhale go. Imagine the inhale came in and you held it like you do these thoughts and these emotions that arise in your life, and you just held it for weeks, months, years. What would happen? You'd start to turn blue. You couldn't, you couldn't sit there, and it wouldn't be sustainable, and you couldn't withstand that experience. So anytime you find yourself holding on to thoughts, anytime you find yourself over processing, over analyzing, and inquiring on topics that are leading you into this discombobulated state, think about, what would it mean to let go of these thoughts? And the reference point is always there, and that's the patterns of breath, the inhale and the exhale. So let's take the inhale in. Your inquiry is only as good as long as you can hold your breath. If you're relate that, you have something to relate to, and humans respond very well when they have reference points, when we have something to relate to. And that's why we're so completely aroused and completely ingrained into this current way of life, is because we're completely drawn to the habits of the external stimuli, which is drawn into the five senses. So come into a place where you're, you know, analyzing, what are the things that I see in my life? What are the things that I hear in my life? What are the things that I feel in my life? What are the things that I smell and taste in my life? And how are these directing my experience in life? And what would it mean if I didn't have these five senses? What would the quality of my life be? That's a great place to start.
Those are great, man. Very well said. Beautiful stuff as always. Well, one of the other questions I want to ask, and I definitely agree with all that. I think it's just, breath pattern, our meditation is the process of self-inquiry. It's finding out who and what you are, and breath is one of the most fundamental things. Even if you weren't doing, Pranayama practice, or this practice or X practice. And that's what actually, I want to touch on. A lot of people that I'll find too, I'll call it, the spiritual ego, where someone for the first time has read The Secret of the Law of Attraction, and then they know the whole universe, or they've read this book and now they know everything. And they're tricking themselves really quickly, because they're finding and they're opening their awareness, but they're attaching to a teacher. And I think that with what you teach, and with what all great teachers teach, is that it's within. It's a process for you, that I can't give you anything. I can give you tools to, inquire, and I can share my experiences, my direct, open, honest, authentic, congruent, real experiences, without this ego filter that makes me cooler. If I'm a way better snowboarder, I can elaborate, this story and be amazing, and you're wowed. But just by being me is, it's like, it's not good enough, right? We are always wanting to embellish, with Facebook photos and things like that, and to have this extraordinary life. It's up to you to have that extraordinary life. And an extraordinary life doesn't mean the acquisition of things or stuff. It is a consistent process of unraveling what you are, so that you can be everything. You can be infinity. You can experience the real magic of life. And that's why I always love connecting and hearing what you're talking about, because I know that we experience that magic together. It's real. When you connect with yourself and your eyes are open, a bird flying in on a branch is just now the most beautiful thing. It's not, stupid bird, I have to go to work and I need to get my coffee to do this. You're present. And there are practices like pranayama or anything else that can teach you to become more present, to become more aware. But really, it's the honest seeking of who and what you are. And if you can find a practice that helps with that, then that's tremendous. And I think that what you teach is really rare, and it is one of those practices. And I think that it's also important for people to remember to follow their own hearts. Like our mutual friend Anders, beautiful human being, he said, everything that I've ever learned is from life. And we can have I'm an ayahuasca explorer, DMT, and I've been to these realms, and I've been to these realms through yogic breathing. and through these other things.
Mm-hmm.
And I can have this conversation with Anders, who's never went that route, but he knows. And I asked him, how do you know? And it's through art, through his open observation, because the world is the greatest teacher. You just need to have your eyes open enough to see. And then you also need to be
Yeah.
asking the right questions and wanting to look, to not want your head in the sand, because it is comfortable in the sand, with not knowing. You kind of do this route and it's perceived safe, and you do that, and it's just this function. But if you decide in a moment that you are going to look, then you have to accept that maybe what you've been doing for a week or a month or a year or 10 years has kind of been a sham. You haven't been running your own life. You've kind of let the world dictate how you respond, how you feel, what you do, rather than you empowering yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really big switch for some people.
Yeah, the teacher, the guru tradition of teaching is actually fairly new, and that's a very interesting topic to touch on, because without a doubt, anyone who has ever kind of inquired on themselves, and that's why I kind of use that question, utilize inquiry and analysis of yourself, because you really come to understanding your own teacher. The guru aspect of learning is fairly new and came in, let's say, in the 1400s or so forth. Whereas, and touching on a question you were saying about learning from nature, and this is profound actually, in the Uddhava Gita, one of Krishna's last transmissions, is a powerful, powerful ancient text. Krishna talks about one of the kings coming into connection with a frolicking naked yogi walking down the path, and the king is completely taken back by this wandering dervish, or this wandering yogi, as you could say, and asks this Brahmin, what are you doing with your life? How are you so happy? How are you so joyous? How are you sitting there standing naked? How are you not hungry? Are you not shameful of your body? What are you doing in your life that is leading you to be so ecstatic, completely in love, and have no worries and care in this world? And the Brahmin, the yogi says, the transcendentalist says, um, I've found 24 teachers, spiritual teachers on my path, that have brought me to a space of awareness, realization, self-realization. And the king says, please tell me of these teachers. Who were they? I'm completely intrigued by what you're doing. And this is Krishna speaking this story to his cousin, Uddhava. And so he begins to list off his spiritual teachers to the king, and you would think he starts saying, Jesus, Buddha, Allah, like these teachers. And he starts saying, well, the first teacher was the sun, the second was the moon, the third was the wind, the fourth was fire, a honey thief, a deer, a python, a bird, and he just keeps going on and lists these things that he's found on the path. He lists a mountain, and that have brought forth complete states of revelation and understanding into his life. And it's beautiful, because this is a direct transmission coming from the source of all sources, right? So there's the three primordial gods in ancient Hindu mythology. And ancient Hindu mythology is one of the most ancient myths, ancient stories, ancient sciences of antiquity. One of the most ancient. It's dating back, some would say even beyond Egypt and so forth. And so we have Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And Krishna is the incarnation of all three. And in the Uddhava Gita, Krishna says, I am the spiritual master of the entire universe. I mean, can you imagine being the spiritual master of just this world, or the spiritual master of just the Milky Way? Imagine having, imagine being in a space where you're literally putting yourself on all planets in each galaxy in the whole universe. That's omnipotent, as we would say, and omniscient, right? So it's very, very beautiful and so humbling to have someone, and you can tell that these teachings are coming from directly from someone who is experiencing Krishna, or Krishna directly, because there's no ego, there's no follow this teacher, and it's the direct trend, going down the line of teachers, like follow this teacher, that teacher dies, then follow the teacher of that teacher. It's like Krishna is saying, do you want to find yourself? Do you want to really connect to yourself, Udhava? Here's a story about how to find the teachers who are really going to bring realization to your life. Nature. It's the open book of nature. It's the book that you can never stop reading. It's a book that you've always been reading. There's only one way to open the book, and that is to get to a point where you're calm and still, and you're able to see the bird on the branch, like you said, instead of walking by the bird on the branch saying, "I've got to pay these bills. I've got to keep my baby mama happy." So I hope that little story helps. It's a great one, and without a doubt, nature is the way to really connect to a deeper space of who you are. And I feel like I didn't really give people a clear understanding maybe of what pranayama is, and just in short, again, prana is this vital primordial energy that gave rise to all energies, and yama means control, self-discipline. So it's this coming into control, coming into self-discipline of this vital force. That's it.
Nice. Yep, that's nice and clear and concise. I like it. Your story is also excellent, and I agree with all that. And also, you can see just the truth, right? So when you're talking about Krishna and the story, and you can hear it and you can see the truth when it's there, if you're open. So whether it's presenting itself through nature, wherever you are, whatever books you have, whatever people you have, whatever experiences you have, if you are open, if you open your heart, if you open and ask and say, I want to know who I am, I want to know what this is about, I want to know, I want to connect with source, I want to connect with myself, and you have that openness, the universe will always respond to you, no matter what. You don't need to go find, Engel and Matt. You don't need to go find Wayne Dyer. You don't need to go find yoga. You don't need to go find martial arts. You're going to gravitate to whatever you need to have those experiences, and they will be gifted to you. That's all you really need, is that openness, that willingness to want to know, that willingness to know yourself and to be honest, because we are all divine, and it's this forgetting that we have with the analytical mind of creating this ego around who we think we should be and what we need to do to create self-worth for ourselves. And it's so much simpler than that. If we can just kind of relax and stop trying to acquire and surrender. One of the timeless lessons for sure is the ability to surrender to what is. And then when you're having this experience, then what you get as the creator, as the co-creator, is choice. Do I choose to look at this as a lesson? Do I choose to try to find what wisdom is in there? Or do I say, woe is me, why is this always happening? And continue down this path. So anything that you do to honestly try to know yourself, I think that the bottom line is always to trust yourself, always to know that you do have the answer within, that it is always presenting itself, and you just have to open your eyes to look.
Being discerning in that's why I mentioned the five senses. So being aware that everything you do know about yourself and you do know about this life, be aware that what comes in through the five senses, most likely there's something pure than that. So like discerning if I feel is the truth, or if I feel that's the truth because I've convinced myself that's the truth. So with absolutely.
Yeah, that's a very high level point there. To take it and find ways to build up your ego or build up the false self, and directly experiencing without the illusion, without. I was talking to Don Miguel Ruiz last podcast, and he said enlightenment is direct experience without ego, without having.
It's key. It's where the practice starts to really unfold, and where you really start to answer the questions of the self, is when you concentrate on that one point. So even if and you're right, because the ego is just this complex we build up, and there's nothing wrong with the ego. We all have the ego. You need the ego, and the ego is just a word. It's just a modern word that we use for this characteristic complex that we build up of ourselves, and it's comprised of preconceived notions of who you feel you are, and perceptions of who you may be, and probabilities of who you may be in the future, and so forth. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, again, it's a word representing the complexity of the adolescent mind, so to say, which is cool. The mind is a really cool place to really start the exploration, and it's a place to really come. This is what yoga is about. Yoga is about learning to control the mind, learning to regulate the five senses, so we can arise to a place of liberation. And the body is light. The self is light. You walk upon sand and you cast no footprint. You walk upon the sun and you cast no shadow. You have no debt to existence. You are light. You're controlled. You're connected. You're regulated. You're in that space. Can you, when I mentioned stillness a lot, but can you imagine how profound you can be if you are in a space of stillness? I mean, for example, you drive your car down the street and you do 100 miles an hour. You're going to see maybe 4 trees, and you're going to maybe see that one kid at the stoplight. If you drive down the same street and you do 20 miles an hour, you're going to see more than you did driving 100 miles an hour. So slowing yourself down, imagine what you would see if you stopped completely. You'd see your whole landscape, you'd see your whole environment, and you'd begin to pinpoint every space in that environment. You'd begin to completely connect to it and come into awareness of what caused the birth, what sustained the growth, and what is causing the decay. Imagine you could come into that realization of every element within your ecosystem, within your surrounding environment, and then you're expanding that. It's like this. It's like Neo in the Matrix when he flexes and this force field permeates. Moving from you is this, like, your field of awareness, your field of connection, and the practice it changes you, and it changes everything that you know about yourself. And you are this healing machine. This is the really, really interesting thing that I've experienced directly with pranayama, is that there is no disease that you cannot work with and deal with if in your body. Not at all. Pranayama is something that really addresses every core component within the body. And I mean, from colitis to cancer to depression to neurological disorders such as Lyme's disease, muscular dystrophy, and so forth. People have had such profound healing shifts with pranayama that it's uncountable. You can't come to a place where you're almost deducing it anymore. It's just, it is what it is, and the proof is in the experiences people are having. Going from a place of using your inhaler every single day and using steroid stimulants to allow yourself to breathe properly, and within 2 months you're in a space where you're completely breathing without your inhaler, and you're really experiencing the expansiveness of the inhale and the deflating motion of the exhale, and you're connected to that experience. It's really, really a profound practice, and it's a practice that people are going to be becoming more and more familiar of as time flies, because people have had a real affinity with the body and the movement of the body, weightlifting, circuit training, baseball, football, snowboarding, skateboarding, surfing, all of that. People have had this affinity with the complete awe that the body can produce. And people are going to start merging into an even deeper state of inquiry, which is the mind and the breath. And that's just the natural evolution of things. People will start to see it in the next 5-10 years. It's going to really start to shift. And maybe there'll be an interest to go even further and beyond that. And that's where we start entering the psychic development of the human experience, which is really cool.
Yeah, man. Well, I want to jump in there because you said so much. So when you were talking, I was writing down so I could confirm all those points and just kind of add my 2 cents as you went down. I agree, 100% agree with all that. It's going to be a shift of awareness, a shift of possibility. There are so many stories of people curing themselves of incurable diseases, all the ones you named and more, time and time again, but it's not in the regular conscious media. And then you could also die from those things too. That's very real. But, I went to a seminar with Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he's helping people go into a meditative state and do the practice, right? He's not the first one to say, clear your mind, imagine the outcome that you want, and then it will happen, and live in it. He's, they've been saying that, mystics and yogis have been saying that forever. But we need teachers to go down the line. And the nice thing is that he, has a science background. So for me and you, two bearded weirdos, to say, you control your body, you have infinite power, no matter what ails you, you have the power to fix that. That's one thing, and we know it's true. But now that we have science catching up and saying, hey, no, like, this actually is true, we have tons and tons of recorded cases. And even if it weren't, like I was explaining this to a friend the other day, even if it weren't, and something happened to me, if I don't give myself that opportunity to say, I can heal myself, I do have the power, then it's never going to happen. I have not even given myself a chance, right? Anybody who's ever done it has given themselves the chance. It's the only way, because you could eat it at any moment in any different way. So, but if you never give yourself the opportunity and believe it, it's definitely not going to happen. And then you were talking about Neo from the Matrix. We are all just energy. And through that alignment of prana within you, the life force connecting with everything, you start to know that you are more spirit and not human. Most people think that we're humans going around doing, third dimensional density stuff, like pick up brick and move over here, when really we're spiritual beings getting spiritual lessons. But we have what I call, the analytical mind, or the dum-dum brain, that wants to just move the brick because it's doing something. It's like, I'm here. And now we're shifting to this whole new paradigm, of what is possible. And it is an energy shift. And if you shift within, you're going to shift your surroundings. And as I've increased my energy and increased my awareness, my surroundings have gotten better. They've always been great because I've usually had a pretty good outlook, but they're getting better and better and better as my awareness grows and grows and grows, and my energy and my neo power and whatever that vortex is, I'm consciously creating it. And then I'm staying in awareness for longer periods of time. I'm driving in awareness. I'm having conversations in awareness, and it's a consistent practice. But we are just powerful, infinite energy systems. We are all infinite here. And it is a thought. It is a switch in the mind to get past that analytical mind from whatever your parents said, or your school said, or this person said, or this experience that you had, to make you believe that you are not infinite, to make you believe that you do not have control over your reality. Because the truth is that you do. And you might be in a crappy situation, but you can get out of it. You can improve it. And if you've got to go through some stuff, then it's going to be your perspective as you go through, if you can continue to go. It's not always easy. Life definitely throws you curveballs, but it's going to be in your response, how you choose to move forward, and gives us the power. And one thing that I wanted to add here, because we've been going for about an hour and we're definitely going to have to do this again. I know for you that this practice, and I know that even from the people that I know of that have gone to see you, and when I've done the practice with you, it has been beautiful and it has been profound. How, if people are interested in this, can they start? Can you give them maybe something that they can start doing every day, like a simple breath pattern, or where they can find more about you to start doing this? Because there's not a lot of people out there teaching this stuff. And if they're excited and they're on board and they want to start the inquiry, can you help them and give them a leg up, give them some resources, give them a practice, give them a place to go?
Well, if people are looking to connect to that space in themselves, if they're looking to establish a practice, they can visit my website, www.pranayamasadhana.com, and there's a lot of stuff there that they can really connect with, and we can create these beautiful programs for you, and you can come to workshops, classes, training, so forth. to give you something that will really change your life right now is a practice that is learning to connect with holding the breath, which will connect you with learning to sit still in one space. And that's really, really important. This pranayama is called kumbhaka, puraka kumbhaka. Puraka means internal inhale, and kumbhaka means retention. So we're learning to retain the breath and hold the breath at the very peak of the inhale. And so let's just say with this practice, we're going to do 5 repetitions of 30. That means we're going to hold the breath 5 times, and we're going to retain the breath for 30 seconds each time. So what we're doing is we're inhaling, and we're elongating the inhale for this, all the way up to the very peak of the chest. And when we reach the peak of the chest, we're retaining the breath for 30 seconds. And your count can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or it could be 1, 2, 3, 4. When you reach 30, exhaling all the way out to the very base of the pelvic floor, and right away inhaling all the way back up to the very peak of the chest and retaining the breath. Doing that 5 times, holding the breath for 30, that'll really shift the things you're experiencing. And just beginning there, you do that every single day. You do that 3 times a day, a lot of things will start to shift with you. And if you're intrigued and you want to learn more and really, connect on a deeper level of how to really establish your breathing and move beyond even establishing a connection of the physical modes of application, then reach out with me on my website, and we can go further than that. But that practice right there is very powerful. Puraka kumbhaka. Without a doubt, kumbhaka retention is one of the primary components in pranayama, because it teaches you to really learn how to retain the prana. Right? You inhale, you draw an influx of prana into the body. When you retain the breath, this is how you distribute prana all throughout the body. So this is where you start to really experience the healing within the neurological capacity, and so much more. We could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. I'm totally willing to.
Man, well, that's awesome. Thank you for that little tool. I definitely invite everybody to try it. When this is done, I'm not going to bore you with me trying to do this breathing practice, but there's a difference to actually doing the practice. So if the whole world wanted strong legs and they didn't know 5 sets of 5 squats was the way, 5 sets of 5 squats, a couple days rest, then do some squats again, and that's it. The people who do the squats are going to have some strong legs. Those of you who listen to my boy Engel and you try it out just to see what happens, you will have an experience. Your energy will shift and the universe will respond, because
you have strong legs, strong conscious legs to stand on.
Exactly, man. And everything else is illusion. You know what I mean? Jobs and everything outside of you. It's this thing that you want to bring in, and that's what the practice of pranayama is. That's what you're teaching, and that's the fundamentals of being human is self-exploration. So I definitely encourage everybody to give it a try, to have the experience, because it is visceral and it can change. And I definitely invite you to check out his website. I am going to be pestering him to make some MP3s for some guided meditations, because there's a lot out there and it's a saturated market, and there's lots of good and there's lots of not so good. So, once we get the Engel MP3s out there where we can go through, I definitely, check out his course. This guy knows what he's talking about. Buddy, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your love and passion and just beautiful self with the world. I value as a friend and a human being. I've seen what you've done for other people, and I know how powerful your lessons are, and how you come from a place of genuine truth and wisdom, and with a genuine open heart of wanting to help your fellow man. So it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And I look forward to having you back on the show, and, we'll talk about whatever subject we want. We can get deep down the rabbit hole. We might keep it, PG, who knows, but we're probably going down the rabbit hole. So again, my friend, thank you so much. And we will be in touch, and we will do this again. My gratitude, buddy. Love you, man.
Thank you so much. Love you too, bro. Have a good one.
Bye.